Welcome back to 2020 Vision. This week, our guest is Chris Cook. He is the Chief of Environment, Energy, and Open Space at the City of Boston. Chris, how are you doing?
Very good, TK. Thank you.
You are approaching 2 years in this role, right?
I am, yeah.
Congratulations. And Chris,
Thank you.
this is new territory for all of us here in the world. And like many cities, Boston City Hall really needs to serve as a source of guidance and leadership and clairvoyance to the public. That's a big job. How has it been going over at City Hall?
I've been really impressed with the mayor's approach to the response to the pandemic. At the core of it, he always places people, right? And so the idea that, you know, we have to be very intentional about helping out the most socially vulnerable. And so I think about his efforts and the philanthropic community's efforts around setting up the Boston Resiliency Fund. I mean, to date, they've actually distributed over $17 million with things as varied as, you know, getting Chromebooks for BPS kids who are now doing remote learning from their homes to expanding testing at neighborhood health centers. It's been an impressive response, and it's been an all hands on deck response. And so, you know, people have been helping out and, you know, guided by the Boston Public Health Commission. But it's been very humbling to be part of and very impressive.
There's so many people to be concerned about in this time, all of us really. In your role, you make sure that our environment that we all share, the air, the water, the land that we all use is great and is continually improving. You know, if there is a silver lining, has reduced traffic or activity in any way aided or boosted our environment?
It has. I mean, you know, just to be clear, though, this is definitely not the way we want to reduce emissions and reduce pollution. I don't want to minimize the fact of how serious the situation is for Bostonians who are affected by the coronavirus. But that being said, it has demonstrated what a shift away from our single-use car transportation heavy model would result in Boston alone. According to, this isn't my statistic, Dr. Lucy Hatera over at Boston University has cited that our carbon emissions are down approximately 15%. And that's really extraordinary. It's almost as if, you know, all of our transportation goals had actually been accomplished. But again, you know, having this many people out of work, this many people have to stay at home, that's not the goal. But the air is cleaner. I mean, you can see it at night. You know, you can have an experience within the city and you can see the stars. And I think you see the rewilding of some of our places, you know, where animals that would typically be scared off by lots of traffic or lots of activity are reintroducing themselves into some of the contiguous green spaces that we have in the city. So it is very interesting to watch. I think a big challenge that Boston will have, that all major urban centers across the globe will have, is what are the advantages, what are the opportunities to actually build on the carbon emission, the pollution reduction that's happened, and how can we actually get those baked in so that we keep some of those environmental goals when we come out of this crisis.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned the green space that we all share and have in this city, and there's a ton of it. We rely on our city parks for our personal enjoyment and for public celebrations and for events, and with no large events permitted for the summer, how might we be able to reintroduce events and programming into our public spaces and safely?
That's an excellent question, TK, and it's an excellent question. First off, it's a huge question for the economic health of the city, right? When you think about all the people who work in your sector, the people who support special events and tourism and hospitality, and this is a major pillar of our economy, and it's buoyed by these. You know, we define ourselves in Boston, and we sort of mark the seasons by these large-scale events that take place, you know, whether it's Boston Common or the Esplanade and these other places. And so we're moving into a place where we have to do our best parts by being socially distant and being apart from ourselves and following the guidance when we can reintroduce these large-scale events. That being said, I do think there's an interesting opportunity. The transition I've seen to create that sense of community virtually and have people feel together even when they're separated is pretty remarkable. So you look at, the upcoming Dropkick Murphys concert that's going to be broadcast out of Fenway. You look at Urbanity Dance that's actually projecting some of the dance performances onto buildings and taking this opportunity to be innovative. My hope is, like everything else, we won't be the same. This innovation that we're feeling right now, whether it's, socially distant workout groups that are taking place in some of the open spaces, is that we can actually capture some of that innovation, take it for the best practices moving forward for our events, because I do think we will have to make sure that we are prepared, whether there's a resurgence of the pandemic, this particular one, or if there's another one down the road. The other thing I would just highlight is that, as you said, there's so much green space in Boston. Boston's one of only 2 cities in America where 100% of its residents live within a 10-minute walk of a park. And that's really the backbone of the Charles Eliot and Frederick Law Olmsted legacy of the Emerald Necklace and the old MDC, now DCR parks. And you have this ring of open space around the city that you can use for recreational opportunity. I think it's a reintroduction to our open spaces for some of their original intent, which is that passive recreation, that idea that you go and recreate yourself in nature. And so I think it is an opportunity to reintroduce yourself to parks in a different way.
Is there a part of the city, Chris, that you've yet to explore in your role? I mean, are there any recommendations for those of us who are adventuring more locally?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's a place in the city that I haven't been to, but I've been most of the open spaces, and every neighborhood has a jewel. I mean, just this morning, what I would say is I would take advantage of some of the opportunities that we have during this crisis. This morning, I rode my bike from West Roxbury over to Jamaica Pond, and I got to take advantage of DCR closing down Parkman Drive, which actually opens up a lot more space around the pond and gives you these unbelievable elevated views of this natural asset in our city. It's just a unique way to see the city, and it's something that's not normally available to us. What I would encourage people to do is to look at spaces other than Boston Common and Franklin Park, and get into some of these other spaces that you don't really know about. And the one that I would give the biggest plug for is Olmsted Park in the Necklace. It's absolutely gorgeous. It also has ponds located in it, and the pathways were just redone.
Hey, so we are hopefully getting towards a world of back to normal or some semblance of that. What adjustments should we be, I guess on a broad scale, should we be prepared to make as we safely resume to a life within this world-class city, whether it's in a park or whether it's on the train or whether it's at not in an urban space that we've come to know and love?
Yeah, I think one thing is that we have a social responsibility to others, right? And we always did, right? This is the idea behind, this is why, we have littering campaigns, and this is why we recycle, right? That there's a benefit to the whole for a minor inconvenience to me. And I think we are all going to have to be inconvenienced in some way so that we all benefit at a larger scale. So when we're taking public transportation, following the latest guidelines, wearing masks, making sure that we're socially distanced, we're going to have to put up with some inconveniences so that we're all better off for it. I actually think that's, again, not a lesson that we want to learn, but it's a lesson in humility in the way we interact with the natural world that'll serve us well.
Well, Chris Cook, thank you very much for joining us today. That we will hopefully check in with you down the road, and hopefully things will be a little bit more normal when we do. So thanks.
Appreciate it. Stay safe, TK.